Welcome to Build Your Dream Team training. This training is part of the Thrive Method, which you will know from the Hatch Tribe CEO Collective. I'm Hillary Johnson, the CEO and founder of Hatch Tribe, and I'm a business growth coach that works with women entrepreneurs and some guys too to help them build their companies, to build really amazing businesses. And part of that conversation, almost always, is about how do you build the perfect team? And how do you build people around you that can help you see your vision come to life? And this is a place I want to begin. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. I love this quote by Helen Keller because it's such a beautiful reminder for us as individuals, but also for us as business owners, that there is a limit to what one individual can do. And to be clear, there's not one definition of what your business needs to look like. There's no definition of exactly how many employees you need to have or should have, and we're going to talk about how you come up with that. But it's a good reminder that if you have a big vision for your business and you want to reach more people, there's just a max to how much you as one person can do. And so remember that one of the biggest gifts we can give as a business owner is to employ someone else, to really be able to offer them gainful employment where they are able to earn income and to be able to live their own lives and live out their own dreams, because hey, not everybody dreams of owning a business like we do. So just remember this, that there is a real force multiplier of bringing people together and aligning them to a vision, and you can do that in your business. So your goal as we work through this training is, one, watch the whole thing all the way through. It's not going to be that long, but we're going to touch on some very important parts of building a dream team. And I want you to identify one specific area that you will focus on for the next 30 days. That way you're not biting off all of this at the exact same time, but you're getting a sense of what's coming down the line, especially if you're getting ready to hire, whether it's your first hire or your 10th or 100th, and that you really just nail down one area where you say, okay, next 30 days, I'm going to give my full attention to this. And those 4 areas are these, and it's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's workshop. We're going to talk about hiring. We'll talk about onboarding and training. We'll talk about performance, meaning what is that person doing when they're in the job and how do we maximize the results that we get from our team, and leadership, which is really reflective of you and your own role. So you will be identifying one of these specific areas to take action on immediately following today's training. But again, I encourage you to really go through this entire training because you're going to see how all of these pieces really start to weave together to build a beautiful team. Now, I want to remind you of this really important thing. It does not matter how big your team is. So resist the urge to start comparing your business and potentially thinking about the girl next door or the person you've seen on Instagram. It doesn't matter what he or she has done. What matters is that you're building the business that you need to, based on your goals, based on your vision, based on the life that you want to live, and that the team that you're building is reflective of that. So just remember, comparison here is not even remotely appropriate and it's not useful. So just resist the urge to drop into comparison mode because it doesn't serve you. Okay, we are going to start talking about hiring. Now, of course, with hiring, what we're talking about is, identifying people and really identifying what things we need those people to do before we bring them onto our team. Now, this is a question we have to start with, which is, do you even need to hire? And this is a question that I will often get from business owners who will say, is it time for me to hire now? And I can tell you anecdotally that if you're thinking it's time to hire, you're probably already at the moment where you're a little too late. And I don't say that meaning you need to put fire under your ass and get going. But if you're already thinking about it, the answer is yes. So let's dig into a little bit more nuanced answer here that can be really helpful. So the question of do you need to hire can often be answered by these couple of things. One, is your time maxed out? So when you look at your work week, do you have any margin for error? Like if one thing happens and it upsets your entire week, or if you get sick, for example, and you're out for an entire week, can your business function? Is your time fully maxed out? There's just no room. And especially if you're not able to live the life that you want, like you're not able to go to the gym, you're not able to spend the time with your family or your friends. And like those can be really good indicators that you need to hire. You need some help in your business. Now, another important question is, are you generating the income you want? In many cases, if you're not able to generate that income, you need some help because those people are going to help you do things either directly on income generation or behind the scenes that supports you stepping into a different role in your business. Which brings us to number 3. Are you wasting time and energy on things in your business that are preventing you from focusing on those income driving activities? Really, for in most businesses, there becomes a moment where you as the business owner need to spend a lot of your time in the income generation. And at some point in time, you will teach other people to do that part where you will really rise even out of that. And so just know that if you're not able to do income driving activities or you don't have someone who is doing it, it doesn't matter how much work you do behind the scenes because your business cannot grow. Another question that's important to ask is, have you stopped enjoying your business? And I think that this is not a question that is often brought up when we talk about hiring, but if you're no longer loving it, it might be because you're burning the candle at all ends. You're touching all of the things and you're burnt out, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed. And those can be reasons that we fall out of love with what we're doing, but they can often be easily solved by bringing in some people to help you do it. And another really important question is, what are your bigger goals, both professionally and personally, so that you're really thinking about what is the business that I am building, and do I have a vision that demands really that I bring in a team to help build this and to grow this. So I would ask yourself each of these questions just as a first pass of whether or not you need to hire. Now, the immediate question that comes after this is, what should you hire for? And this is critically important because your ability to get into the granular details of this is going to dictate whether or not you get a good hire or you get a bad hire. And so you are going to want to take some real time to sit down and work through this to make sure that you're hiring for the right thing and you're not being really vague about what you want because, hey, guess what? Nobody else can read your mind. So it's important that you put some effort and energy into really identifying this. So here are 2 things I want you to think about when you're asking yourself, what should you hire for? And there's 2 boxes. On the left-hand side, I want you to ask yourself these questions. What do you hate doing? What do you suck at doing? Like, these are the things when you get started, you're like, oh my God, I'm really terrible at this. Like maybe QuickBooks, or what do you have no business doing? Like, every time you sit down to work on this, you're like, oh my God, somebody else could be doing this. You just haven't pulled the trigger to ask someone else for help. So that's one way of looking at it. These are things that we often should and can and easily can get off of our plate because they're things we don't like, we're not good at them, and realistically, it's just not a good use of our time. On the other hand, this other exercise on the right side is going to shine light in the areas where you really are probably going to want to keep doing that work, at least for now. What do you love doing in your business? What is in your zone of genius? It's like, this is the stuff that's like, it's when you're on fire. You're like, this is me. I love it. I'm good at it. And it's truly where you're operating at a very high level in your business. And it could be something that just at this point, only you can be doing it. It might be too much at this point to think about completely handing over. Potentially it's something that over time you would like to, but at this moment, it's only you. So I want you to shine light on those areas on the right because they're going to start to illuminate what you can retain as part of your job, and shine light on those areas on the left of the screen because those are things that really can become part of what you hire for. And typically those are often the very best places to start getting things off of your plate. Now, after this, if you've identified the things that you want to hire for, there's a question of, well, how do you find good candidates for that? So once you have a list of, okay, these are some things, I don't want to do them, I want to get this off of my plate, I'd really like to have help with this. How do we make sure that you find a really good candidate who's going to be able to do whatever that is? So let's get real step by step on this one because this is really important. The first is you've got to write a robust job description that includes the roles and responsibilities. And this is really important because this is where you start to manage expectations. If you put out a job that says like, I'm looking for a part-time assistant, and you do not clarify what that means, you can bring on a hire who then is really a bad fit because they read part-time assistant and they interpreted what they thought it meant. And you had your own idea of what you thought it meant, but neither of you discussed what it actually meant, and you have a bad fit. So what we want to do in order to attract the right candidate is be as granular and as detailed as we can. So when you sit down and you think about what do I want you to do, write it out like bullet points and let it be very robust. Like, I want you to work on blah, 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 blah. Like, it should be very detailed. And you can look at other job descriptions from other big companies. They do this very well. Another thing is I want you to ask for exactly what you want. Oftentimes I will hear from people who are hiring for those first, one or two people that they say, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this. I don't know. Do you think I should modify this job down or ask for something different? And the answer is no. You want to ask for the A+++ version of what you're looking for. You can always hire someone who's a B fit, but if you don't ask for the A fit, you're going to get candidates that are a C or a D fit for the job because you've already leveled down before you even went out the gate. So I want you to aim high. Now, another piece that's really important is you need to promote that you're hiring, and it's a great thing to be hiring. So I want you to be really proud of that and promote it and put it on your own website, on your social media, on your newsletters. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see early companies making is not promoting it through their own channels. So I want to make sure you are doing that, but also post the role elsewhere. So this could be on LinkedIn or other job boards. This could be through college or alumni organizations, etc. So any place that you can post it, put it. And some of those you may have to pay for, but you will often get better candidates and more candidates, and that's great. And one of the things here that you do want to do when you are posting a job is I want you to be very clear about what you want from the candidates. And that means, do you want them to send you a resume? Do you want them to submit a cover letter? And I put an asterisk here, test that they're reading. One of the things that I really like, and I've seen companies get really good results from this, is they say, for example, put in capital letters only, like resume 2021 in the title of the email. So every email that you get, if they didn't follow those instructions, you can start to eliminate them because they're not reading what you've asked them to do. And if they're not doing that in the application process, what do you think they're going to do when you hire them? So that's just one example, but you can put in, it could be anything, but you want to make sure that you put a little bit of something in there that is asking them to really read and make sure that they follow it through because you're going to test them out, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, next question, how do I make sure that I hire the right candidate for me? And this is an important, criteria. I mean, there are going to be people that I might hire for a job that you wouldn't hire because you and I are different people. And you and I may interpret what we need very differently. So it's important to understand what you're looking for in terms of those roles and responsibilities, but it's also important to understand the person you are and what it is that you're looking for, even a fit culturally for candidates. So here are some steps to follow. The first thing is, as you get those resumes in, immediately eliminate anyone who didn't follow your instructions in the job post. So using the example I gave you, if anybody submitted in like that resume without using the title line that you asked for, you pull them out immediately. And I know that sounds harsh, but again, remember, if they're not following instructions in written format, how do you think they're going to follow them later? And this is when they're meant to look their best, right? They're submitting a resume and trying to get a job. What's it going to look like when they're working for you? Do you think they're going to get better or worse, right? Number two, review the resumes for a fit based on the criteria for the role. So with the people that are left, I do want you to look at each resume and perhaps cover letter or whatever else you've asked for and really scrutinize it. Do they have the experience you're looking for? Do they have the capabilities to work with whatever tools you've said you need them to work for, or whatever the case may be? So read them, and then I want you to eliminate anyone who's not a fit. Now, the next thing you're going to do is send a test assignment to qualified candidates, and you're going to give them a firm deadline. So I'm going to give you an example, and you would think about this for your own business, what would be useful and what would be relevant for the role. But let's just say you're a marketing firm and you're looking to hire someone to do social media. What you might do is say, send me, 3 example social media posts that you would create for our business and for this whatever account, and you would drive them to like a specific company that you wanted them to create social media post for. And you would say, what I'm looking for is the graphics, the copy, and then any tags or hashtags that you would use. And you're going to give them a deadline. So the next step is we're going to see what you get back, and you're going to start to eliminate candidates again based on whether or not they performed on this particular test assignment. So this is a really nice way of eliminating candidates because 1, the quality of the work might not be what you're looking for. 2, they may not have turned in the assignment following your directions or within the timeline you've asked for. So again, you're really running candidates through a little bit of a ringer, but an appropriate ringer, to start to see if they're doing good work. Now, with anybody who passes that test, you're going to phone screen them. And this is important because we want to see how they behave and how they act when they're not in front of you. Do they answer the phone on time? Or if you ask them to call you, do they call you on time? How do they behave themselves? Can you hear dogs barking in the background, or are they very professional? So you're going to want to screen out some candidates that way. And then with the best of the best, you will finally do an in-person or a video interview. Now, this may sound like a lot, but I can tell you that with companies that do this, they get really good hires. And the reason why is because each pass of this is eliminating people who are not the right fit for the role. And at the end of the day, what are you looking for? You're looking for the person who's going to be the right fit for the role and the right fit for your company. And so what we do in that last pass, when we have an in-person or a video interview, now a lot more of the personality kicks in. We start to see kind of how they act and how they behave, and are we vibing with them? And it's good because if they've made it that far, chances are they've already mustered up. They're doing a really good job meeting the other criteria that's important for the job, and now you can feel out for that fit that sometimes we can't experience without being with them in person. Now, I will share, there are some other tools that we also use and many companies will use to help deepen our understanding of who a candidate is and what they may be like when they get into the role. And these are some hiring assessment tools or personality tools that are all fabulous for kind of getting a sense of who this person is, how they act, how they behave, how they respond to different stimulus, for lack of a better term. And it would give you a sense of how they're going to be in that role. So for example, if you need a person who can roll with the punches, who doesn't have to have a fierce start to finish every day, that doesn't need a lot of clarity and rules and specific point A to point B to get a job done, they actually thrive in a space of uncertainty and figuring it out, you can get that through some of these tests. So you're going to be able to measure that. Or if you need them to be more extroverted in nature, perhaps because they're going to be in a sales role and they can't be quiet and timid and introverted and not able to speak up. So you would be able to look at that. So I encourage you, if you're entertaining any of these, take yourself through the assessment first, see what the reporting looks like, understand what the depth of it looks like, and then see if you think that would be useful for your particular hiring needs. Okay. We are moving on to onboarding and training. Now at this point, you've made the hire, you've decided who the person is, and now the question is well, how do we get them up to speed and really bring them into your business and start to train them on what it is that they're supposed to be doing? So the question is, how do I make sure my new hire succeeds? And I really want you to think about this. What does success look like for this hire? What do you want them to be able to do? And how does it really impact and influence your ability to succeed as a business? Now, this is something that comes up a lot. A lot of business owners will say, oh my God, they brought in a new hire. They're in 30 days in and they're losing their minds. Shouldn't she know how to do this already? Oh my God, she keeps asking me questions. I can't believe she doesn't know how to do this. I don't have time for this. This is bull crap. Maybe some of you have done this before, where you've brought someone in and found yourself inordinately frustrated within a small window of time that this person is somehow not completely taken off and soared and succeeded in the role. Have you done that? I have. Personally, I have. So I'm confessing it so that you know that, like, I've done this. I've been this person. And the advice that I was given, and I live by this to this day, and I teach this to everyone, is you need to think about the first 100 days. During the first 100 days, your job is to train and retrain until your hire is successfully operating in his or her role. You got to wrap your head around this. This is about your mindset, how you come to the table to train an employee. So for 100 days, your expectation going in should be they're not going to know how to do it. I mean, I want you to hear me hear me say that one more time. Your expectation should be that they're not going to know how to do it. And they're going to need to be retrained. And they're going to get a lot wrong. And they're not going to meet your expectations because they're probably a little too high, right? So 100 days. This is patience. This is training. This is retraining, okay? So to deepen that and to understand now, well, okay, I hear you, but like, what do I do in those 100 days? This is what I want you to do. I want you to map out what success looks like at each of these time frames. So within the first 30 days, what specifically should she be able to do? By the 60-day mark, what should she be able to do? And by 90 days, what should she be able to do? So this is where, and I think you're seeing the connection, if we've written a really good job description and we understand those roles and responsibilities that this person is going to be touching, we can look at that list and say, okay, cool. Like in the first 30 days, she should be able to do X, Y, Z. And then you look at the next set of things and you're like, yeah, okay, by the 60 days later, like task 2, 3, 4, she should be able to do all of these things on her own. But understanding with that, what that means is that during that first 30 days, your goal is to train her and train her really, really well to do it and make sure she understands it and she's getting a good command of it and is really learning and growing into the role, okay? So what does good onboarding and training look like? So one, out the gate, when you're bringing in a new hire, one of the things that is so critically important is that they get to know the company. You know, if there's other employees, you want them to meet the team. You want to learn about the company's goals, mission, and vision so they understand what they're connected to. And there's lots of opportunities for them to listen and shadow work and get familiar with the tools and the role. And I would say this is critically important in that first week. It doesn't stop after the first week, but during that first week, it's less about do X, Y, and Z, and it's more about get familiar, get your feet on the ground, start to feel comfortable interacting with you and with the other people in your business. And then over time, we start to train them up about the roles. Now, I will say, weekly meetings, I believe, are critically important for new hires, and I like to book them recurring, where it's the same time every week, and typically at the beginning of the week is great because it gives you an opportunity to meet and review that week's goals, and also discuss like progress from the prior week and make sure you're on track for that 30, 60, and 90-day mark. I also think daily check-ins are fabulous, and this is really meant to foster that open communication and feedback so that you're not like leaving it all bottled up until the weekly meeting and then finding like, whoa, they are not where I want them to be. So one thing that a friend of mine taught me, and I do like this, and some people do a version of this, but is asking your employee at the end of the day to simply write you a quick email. Like all it needs to be is a couple minutes to say, what'd you work on today? So you're asking them to just kind of report back like, hey, what I worked on today was blah, 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 so you can see it. Then you're asking them what went well. So like of all the things you were working on, like you're getting some feedback from them, like, oh, I'm getting comfortable using this, or I had a great conversation with so-and-so, etc. But also, what questions do you have? And that's opening up for that next day. Like if they say, I'm really confused about this particular piece of software, I still can't figure out how to do X, Y, or Z. Awesome. Now you know. So we're asking for them to give us feedback on a daily basis because that helps us keep them progressing forward. And this is the time you need to start offering feedback. And it's important, you know, as you start seeing things that are potentially not going the way you want to let her or him know. Be kind but firm when you give feedback. And this is also a time where we need to set some boundaries. And I'm going to give you some examples that many of us have experienced on different ends of the spectrum. But like, for example, it could be the person keeps popping in and out of your office and saying, hey, can I ask you a question? Hey, can I ask you a question? Hey, can I ask you a question? And you're like, holy shit, I'm never going to be able to get any work done. That may be an area where you need to set a boundary and say, hey, listen, we're going to have a touch base at this time. So save all your questions until this time. And then you and I are going to get together and we'll sit down and talk about it. Or it could be, do you want them pinging you over email, or do you want them pinging you over chat? You need to set the tone for what you want them to do. And the time to do it is in the beginning, because it's training them what you want them to do. And I can assure you, they're going to want to do it right. So tell them what you want. Okay. Moving on, we will go into the third phase of this, which is about performance. So, beyond those first 100 days, let's just assume now you've got an employee in. They're doing their job. They have a good command of what it is that they're supposed to be doing. But of course, at this point, it raises the question of, how do we keep our team motivated, keep them continuing to want to come to work, and hoping that they will be, engaged with their work and want to do good work. So this is where we really want to start thinking about the performance of that individual in that role. And this is a question that I really want you to reflect on for a minute. Do you want your hire to be successful in her role? I know in the heart you will answer that as a yes. Of course you want her to be successful. Why? Well, because, you didn't hire her because you wanted her to suck. Like, you hired her because you need help. You wanted to grow the business. You needed somebody in to take really important work off of your plate so you could focus on other things, right? You want her to be successful. But what often happens is we develop this fear over offering feedback and being, and I'm not going to say critical in a negative way, but we steer away from the critical feedback that needs to be given because we get a little scared of hurting someone's feelings or wanting to be sort of protective of them and not make them feel bad. But at the end of the day, is that serving her? If you avoid giving critical feedback, are you helping her be successful in her role? You and I know the answer to that's no. We can't back away and think that it's going to get better. And if you can't develop that habit with one employee, how's it going to get any better with the next one, right? So the first place this starts is you must inspect what you expect. So for whatever you've hired this person to do, I want you to look at the work that they're producing and to really look at it and say, what's good? What's bad? What needs to change? What does she need to start doing that potentially she's not? We've got to look at it with a critical eye. And you must give feedback. And that is both positive and constructive feedback, okay? So how do you give good feedback? One, I need you to always remember why you're doing it. Do you want the person to succeed in their role and help you and your business succeed in reaching its goal? When that answer is yes, which it always is, you need to keep proceeding forward with giving feedback. So first up, I encourage you always to celebrate positive. Recognize the good work your hire is doing and do this frequently. This doesn't have to be formal either. It can be they sent you an email and you pop them back and you're like, hey, this looks really awesome. I love this. But we also need to address the negative. So I want you to focus your language here around the work and not the person. I think that this is a common misconception we have, is that when we're giving critical feedback or constructive feedback, that it's personal. And it's not, because at the end of the day, you're not criticizing who they are. You're not like, oh, you're a terrible person. You're like, wow, this social media post is not great. And here's why. And here's what we need to do with it, right? So we want to focus our language on the work, not the person, and be very specific in the areas you want her to improve. So for example, let's just say I'm shooting off an email and I've received something from my employee. And at first I say, hey, I just want to recognize this looks really awesome, but here's 2 things I'd like to change. And then you give explicit direction. Or here's 2 things I'd like you to change. I'd like you to revise. I'd like you to evolve. Come back to me with another version of this as soon as it's complete, right? So we're just being real straight and straightforward. Now, one of the things that I think is important, and especially when you have a newer employee and you haven't developed a real understanding of how one another work, is, confirming that they understand. Did they actually hear what you said? Did they understand your feedback? I mean, sometimes remember, like if you're new in a job, you might feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. So it's important just to pause and be like, okay, did you get me? Like, do you understand the feedback? And if you're not sure they get it, ask them to repeat it back to you. Hey, tell me what you think I just told you, just so I can check to make sure we're on the same page. Yeah, cool. Okay. Now, if necessary, sometimes you'll need to put it in writing, and that's also fine. But last point is just be clear, be concise, and importantly, as women, we have a tendency to put the statement, I'm sorry, at the beginning of something, and it's not necessary when you're giving feedback about something that's job related. So you do not need to apologize for asking them to do something different or to revise something. So you don't need to say, hey, I'm really sorry. I hate to ask you to do this, but you revise this again. No, you could say, you know what, this is still not where I want it to be. We need to work through some other revisions. Can you do X, Y, or Z? If this is unclear, or if we're not connecting on the same language, call me or come in, or let's set up a time to talk, right? So just be straightforward. And I can tell you, in years of giving feedback to both employees and to agencies and to third-party companies we've worked with, they always appreciate when they just get it. Like, people want to be good at their jobs. They don't want to suck in their jobs. So you giving feedback is honestly one of the biggest gifts you can give to your team. Feedback is love. I'm going to ask you to think about it that way. Like, feedback is really loving on your team. And a big part of your job as a CEO is to listen. And this is a big part of performance. It's sitting back enough to really ask our team, like, hey, how are things going? Like, how are you feeling in the job? And shutting up and letting them talk and really hearing what they have to say, because oftentimes they have great ideas, or oftentimes there's something that is not working, but we need to be quiet long enough to hear it. And so recognize that one of the things you start to shift into, especially as a CEO, is being a really fabulous listener. So you got 2 ears and only 1 mouth, you know what they say. So that's 2 ears for more listening and 1 mouth for less talking. All right, let's go into the last phase of this, talking about leadership. Now, remember at the outset of this, I said it doesn't matter how many employees you have. It doesn't matter how big your team is. You are a leader, period, end stop. You own your business. And you are leading even your customers and your clients. You are leading that. You are leading the direction of your business. When you have a team, you are leading that team. So it is important that you are always thinking this way and thinking about who you are in your business, but especially as you build your team, because things really start to shift. And this is the important part to remember. Your job is going to change. Your job is going to change as you bring in people into your business. And this is why, for most of us, myself included, when I started all of my businesses, I was the tactician. I was the person who had to learn how to do all the things, and I did. And I would hire for the things I had to hire for, but like, if it was stuff that I was like, yeah, I need to learn how to do this, even if I wasn't the best at it, I was doing it. I was grinding it out, right? And I was buried inside of the business. Conversely, as we start to build a team, we transition into being more the leader of the team and operating less as the tactician, less as the person who's doing all the things, because you're bringing in people to help you do them, right? So how does your role change? So the first thing is you're going to be doing less actual work and more leading, right? And this is a thing that I will say, a lot of business owners kind of go, oh God, like, am I even useful anymore? As you start getting things off of your plate, you may look around and realize like your job has changed so much that you question your own value inside of your company. A lot of business owners say this as they've really built a dynamic team. And I tell them that as soon as they feel that, they've done the right thing. That they've built a business to, in many ways, kind of oust them from the need to be buried inside of it. Now, at that moment, your primary role becomes developing your people and helping them become super freaking successful in their roles. And I think this is an amazing gift of being a business owner, to be able to develop people, to be able to employ them, to give them gainful employment, that they can, earn income and go off and live lives that they want to live. to also develop them, to help them become better professionally and personally. I mean, this is a huge gift, and that becomes your role as the leader. Now, to be clear as the leader, and no matter where you are in life and business, etc., you are not expected to have all the answers. So when that little voice comes up that's like, oh my God, but I'm not ready for that, like, I don't even know how to blah, 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 that's your imposter syndrome, babe. And that's just trying to creep up and keep you playing small. So I just want to encourage you to remember, like, you don't have to have all the answers, but if you're a good listener and you're really thinking critically about the business, I trust, and you should trust yourself too, that you'll find the right answer. You'll figure it out with your team, with whatever resources you have. You'll figure out the way. But as the leader in your business, you are expected to make decisions, and ultimately you are the person who's guiding the ship. It's the vision for your business is guiding what your team will do. And so your role becomes more visionary, more leader driven, but you are the person who's going to need to make, in many cases, some tough decisions. And some of them will be scary. I mean, and you're capable of it. You can do it. But just know that, like, your role is shifting as you shift into that more of the leader of your company. Now, I do like to say this. Most business owners struggle a bit stepping into that leadership role because it is so different than the skills that help you launch your business. And that is okay. You can and you will learn to become the leader that your business needs you to be. This is a new part of your growth as a business owner. And everybody experiences this in a different time, in a different way. But what I can tell you is that all of us go through it. Building your dream team is an evolution. The truth is, you're not going to knock it out of the park with your first, 10 hires. They're not all going to be like A+ players. Well, maybe they are. But for most of us, myself included, I've made some bad hires over the years. But you get better. And you get better at all of this over time. I mean, it's just like anything. The more you practice it and practice doing it right, you get better results over time. But what I want to remind you is that this is not a time to go hide away. I will say that, like, my mastermind groups, the CEO Society, we spend a lot of time talking about team development, building our companies, becoming a leader, because it is such a different part of your evolution and of your journey as a business owner than it is like trying to figure out your sales cycle. So do not be afraid to seek help. Working with a business or a leadership coach or even joining a mastermind can be an excellent place to find that type of support as you're growing your team. So just know you're not alone. I've been there. Most business owners have, and you're okay. I just want you to hear that. So your goal, revisiting this as we kind of wrap up here, is I want you to identify one of those 4 areas that you're going to focus on for the next 30 days. Now, if you're like, dude, I'm not even sure, I would actually say start with hiring and start with that first exercise of really doing a good audit of the work that you're doing and understanding whether or not there's things that you don't, we use the criteria of, do you suck at it? Do you hate it? Do you not want to be doing it? Are there some things that you really could get off your plate? And are you spending most of your time, like 80% of your week, is 80% of it spent doing things you love and you enjoy that are in your zone of genius? If not, that's a really nice place to start. So really start thinking about that. But otherwise, pick whatever area is most relevant for you at this moment in time and dig in. So that wraps up today's training. Again, if you have any questions or any feedback, as always, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. You can comment on this video, or you can pop inside of our Facebook group and ask questions at any point in time. And just know, again, it is an evolution. Building a dream team comes with some work and some blood and some sweat and some tears. And I've been through all of those. And I can tell you that it's worth it. Don't give up. Don't let one bad experience spoil it for you. It's going to take some time, but you will get there, and just stay tapped into your vision and remember where you're headed, and you will do it. All right. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.